successful ones that start recording like. Ooh, hang on. I need to mute my.
Oh, yeah, echo cancellation here, right?
Yeah.
There we go.
I saw
That's
the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So
yeah, no, there are a lot of really
while
successful podcasts that start recording right in the middle of conversation. And I honestly love it. So there we did it.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome.
Good morning.
Yes, welcome. I'm not sure who's in the audience, but there's somebody in the audience, and I hope we get a few more. But
I sent a link to one of my guys, so maybe it's him. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Hey, I also posted the link on one of the Facebook pages, so we'll see.
Okay.
But
it's early for a lot of folks.
It is. So yeah, Jason, excited to have you join us. Is he our first guest? Have we had any other guests?
We had Buddy.
That's right.
Buddy was our first guest.
Well,
so you're
second to Buddy. I'm impressed. Thank you, guys. Happy to be on.
Yeah. So
I'll try to fill his seat. I don't know if that'll be possible.
So let's introduce Jason.
I'd love to meet him. I've never met him before, so maybe next time.
Well, you need to.
Next gathering.
You were so close in May. You were so.
I know that last time I was there. Sorry, I cut you off. The last time I was there, I think he left on the Tuesday and I arrived on the Wednesday or something like that.
I think you actually only got there a few hours after he left because he was there that Wednesday morning, and then he cut out at like 8:30 or 9, and you got there later that afternoon. So
he was probably taking my flight out, right? So
probably, yeah.
But yeah, so Jason is the owner and operator of pronounce it for me because I'm not good at French.
Yeah, so Johnstone, Béton, architectural. So that's Johnstone Architectural Concrete. We are located an hour east of Montreal, Canada. So we are a French-speaking province. So that's why you'll hear the Béton architectural. Yeah, so
I could not pronounce that if I tried. I mean, béton, sure, but the architectural part, no
thanks.
Just
say architectural, it's fine.
Yeah,
people will get it.
I live in the deep south, and it shows. So so I'm trying to remember. I think I met you, Jason, at an Ultimate alumni event that was at my studio in 2019.
In Orlando.
I think we'd been kind of peripherally aware of each other before that, but I met you in person at that event, and I feel like we've been friends ever since. So I want to tell y'all, Jason is one of my just favorite artisans. I think his work is phenomenal, and not only that, the business acumen and the way that he's chosen to build his business and his company are really, really impressive. So I hope that we get to get into that a little bit.
Thank you, Caleb. Appreciate
I'm super excited to have you on, Jason, because you're definitely somebody who I look up to in the industry.
Well, hopefully I'll be able to stimulate whatever it is, creative juices for people to get creative with concrete or just to, work on their businesses and get a little more creative with that, which is a very important part, I believe, to work on your business and not just on crafting things all the time. This is what you use to line your pockets, what you use to support your family, what you use to have fun. And if you're going to build something, you might as well make it worth your while.
Well, and I told Jeff this a while back. I'm starting to, since joining CCI and since having a couple of people in my studio, I'm starting to realize that I think there's a lot of creative energy that can go into building brands as in addition to or as opposed to, but really in addition to building things. And I think that's a lot of things. There are a lot of times what artisans take, for granted because they're so good at doing the stuff that they don't really take the time to build the company, and that can be a detriment. So I'm certainly enjoying that. And I have taken a lot of inspiration from the way that you've done it. So just,
I'm going to jump in here and say that you came to class in 2015.
Yes, sir.
January.
Remind me of January of 2015. And it's coming up on 8 years, coming up on 9 years.
Yes.
For you.
Yeah, so why don't you give us a little bit of your story, like background?
I'm pretty darn proud of seeing your success. I don't follow a lot of people's paths just because there's so many people to keep track of.
You couldn't.
Every year goes by and it's like more and more and more. And I look back and at one several years ago, we did like an accounting of all the people that came through CCI, and it was, thousands. So it's hard to keep track of a lot of folks, but there are a few who stand out. And you are somebody who has really risen above the path that most people take. And I think your vision for where you're taking your company and what you want it to be for you and your customers is a little bit unique, and certainly something to be inspired by and to learn from. And I think that's part of the story that we'd like to hear from you today is, as much as you're willing to share, just, go for it.
Yeah, so
I mean,
start as
geez,
close
Jeffrey,
to the beginning as you can.
I'm gonna get all sentimental on you guys.
Yeah, I would.
So, I mean, I think from starters, I think just being someone that wants to be creative with concrete or, woodworking or just building with your hands in general, we are people that enjoy building things. I enjoy building, when I see something made out of steel, I'll look at it and be like, oh, how did they make that? Oh, that's angle iron with an HSS tube, with a rod. Okay. And then I'll just try to dissect and be like, oh, I could build that myself. And that's to my detriment also, because I also try to do it myself and do everything myself. And I actually enjoy that. So that being said, I also enjoy building a business. I enjoy unmolding something every morning. I just enjoy it all. And I think maybe for me, it's a pinnacle of, I call it the 3 circles. So I'm passionate about what I do. I absolutely love it. It fits my economic standards, what I need to survive and what I can pull out of it. And I believe that in the niche that we're working in, I can hopefully be the best at it or one of the best at it in our industry. So all those 3 circles line up. And for me, that pinhole is Johnstone. And I just happen to love it. So some people get up in the morning and they don't really want to go to work. I can't wait on Monday morning to get back to work. Obviously, there's days that are better than others, and I'm pulling my hair out, and there's a lot of it can be toxic sometimes. Not toxic, but you could be poison in the shop where you just don't want to let it get at you because you have to redo something, and you're like, why did you guys drop it? Why didn't that cast work? And it'll drive you crazy, but you just have to tap yourself on the back and keep moving forward and use that as fuel and say, I didn't fail, I just learned. So I try to do that all the time. And, as for a business, I mean, I've always worked for myself. I've never really worked for anyone. I did, younger and, between my endeavors, but just always trying to work for myself and navigating the waters of business and trying to use it to my advantage. I mean, the government built our capitalist society, to advantage people with, we call them incorporated companies, but LLCs, I believe, in the US. And if you can use all those loopholes and use them to advantage, understand it, and really enjoy it, I mean, it's just a lot of fun, right? So, you have your company and you protect it with another company, and then you buy real estate with another company and you build that company. And, for me, I just find that super fun and it just gets me up in the morning. So, where do I start? I mean, I start by just saying, I love business. If we go to dinner with me, it's maybe something I just want to talk about all the time, but I'm super interested in your business and what you do and how you manage it. Do you have a bakery? Because I want to know about your bakery. I want to know what your pitfalls are. I want to know your daily struggles, and every business has its struggles and its pitfalls. It's just, everyone goes through the same thing. I mean, you have better business models. Some businesses are better than others, but I mean, everyone struggles. So what is it? How can we solve that problem? As an entrepreneur, every day, my job is to solve a problem, not put out fires, solve a problem. You happen to have to put out fires, but I don't want to be a fireman. I want to get those problems solved before
they become fires. Yeah.
I think that's sort of the common thread that ties everybody who touches this industry, has in as part of their personal fabric is, we want to be creative. We want to create something, but we're also addicted to problem solving. And they go hand in hand. And sometimes it's not necessarily a problem solving in the sense of, oh, something has to be fixed. It's, I have this idea And the problem solving is, how do I make that happen? And for me, that is the spark that keeps me going. It's solving a new challenge.
How can I reverse engineer this and figure it out? And I know
that
I
big
can.
table we made. How can we do this and actually do it in basically 2 days?
Yeah. So Jason, you came to class in 2015, but like, where were you before that, and what kind of got you into, what got you into this niche? And start there if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll start from the beginning. I mentioned, I enjoy working with my hands. I studied in sports marketing and management, which was my background was snowboarding, and I loved it. I would spend, we lived right next to one of the biggest night skiing resorts in North America. So not the biggest resort, biggest night skiing resort.
Well, that's fascinating.
Don't get me twisted. So, ski. Yeah. So it was, I could go out snowboarding, until 10 p.m. every night. So that's just kind of what I would do. I got involved in the retailing sporting business. So I owned a skate shop with 2 other guys in a town half an hour from here. And it was a pretty big skate shop. I loved it. I enjoyed it. And that actually created so many contacts for me that I still use to this day. It was like a hub for social, just everyone would come in and buy a skateboard, buy clothes, or I'd meet parents, and, they're high ticket items. So it would be parents that had money. Whether that did anything for me or not, it maybe just folks that were entrepreneurs. So that kind of helped pave my way. After, after 10 years of doing that, 10 years working in the business prior, before I bought in, 5 years after I was an owner, I was done with it. I liked the people, I liked the contacts, but it was too stagnant for me just to sit there and hope that people were going to come in and buy something. Mm-hmm. And, I wasn't being creative. I was just, taking a t-shirt that we bought for $10 and selling it for $20. I was doing a job, and then I had partners, and I just kind of realized for me, which I do have a partner today, which is my wife, and in our business, but that's different versus, everything that we do it for the better of ourselves, and having partners that everyone just kind of trying to do the best thing for themselves and hopefully for the society, but they're not always doing it for the society. The society, our business.
Culture, that I found difficult. Right? The internal culture.
Yeah. So then I sold out of that, and then I just didn't really know what to do. So I did, I had to buckle down. I got a job at FedEx at that point, working as a courier. I built my home, and I spent, a whole year. I actually built my home first, and then I got a job as a courier until I figured out what I wanted to do. And I did this, pros and cons list of what I wanted to do. And I figured out that I actually wanted to work with my hands. That was something that really enticed me. So, I'm like, do I want to be a salesman? Do I want to sell stuff online? Do I want to start an online store? Do I want to be nomadic? Sometimes to this day, I do wish that I was nomadic and could travel the world and work, but I'm far from that. So then I took that, and I built my home. And in building our home, we did concrete countertops. Being a young couple with not a large budget, we DIY'd it with just standard quickcrete. Mm-hmm. It was what it was. So we actually only got rid of them a couple of years ago. So it was pretty funny. It was kind of like everyone would show up to my place, and they'd be like, okay, so you're like that guy that just,
this is what you do?
This is what you do. And I'm like, no. This is not what we do, but I do need to work
in your house now.
I do, yeah, and they're beautiful. So, but it took a couple of years to get them out. And so after doing that, I was like, okay, this is really cool. Maybe there's something we can do with this. And I checked online, and I did a crash course in Burlington, the Burlington, Vermont area. And it was a weekend course with some guys, I can't remember their names, out of Boston. And then after the course, it was a weekend crash course. And after the course, they're showing all the jobs that they did, whether it was, countertops, park benches, sinks, and they're like craning things through buildings and like rigging things up. And I'm like, this is very exciting. But I mean, you walk out of there with a 2-day course, and you're more confused than when you walked in. Yeah. I mean, what are you going to do? In my opinion, in 2 days, and concrete is a chaotic material. So here we are 8 years later, and I'm still trying to figure some things out. Right. But so then I got online, and CCI is just, it stacks very well on your Google ratings, and it just pops up. So right away, I went through a couple of different courses. which one do I want to do? And it just stood out to me to be the clear path that just lines everything up, all the tools that you need, whether it starts from, your marketing. Some people need it more than others. Whether it's from the business aspect, some people struggle with that and they need to understand it. How am I going to price these items out? How am I going to manufacture them? How am I going to understand the material? And understanding the material is so important. If someone gives me a book with 3 pages and it says GFRC and this is how you do it, I mean, mind you, there isn't that many materials in it, but there's a lot of techniques, and just trying to relay that message to someone else to be able to do it all the time. I do it all the time in my shop. I'm trying to teach my employees how to spray something up, why it's important that we laminate between our layers, why we need to add plasticizer, but not this one. We need to use this one. And now we want it to flow, so we need to use this. So, it's hot today. We need to add ice. So there's all those little things that I just can't imagine that someone that didn't do a course and would try to just DIY this themselves would be able to make it. So then that's what I did. I took whatever money I had, put it in a pot, probably took the longest flight I could imagine because it was the cheapest one to get me to North Carolina. Just built my home, sold my shares of business, let's go, get on the flight. And, I enjoy that type of thing. It's something about being independent and, going somewhere to do something. I figured I didn't like school, but I love learning things. Mm-hmm. So, I enjoyed my time in school because, I had great friendships and so on and so forth. But for me to sit in math class is just like, it doesn't sit with me. But for me to take a course in something that I enjoy, I am all in. Like I would always, probably one of my hobbies that I would love to do is just, travel all over the place and take different courses and different things and try to figure things out.
Man, that would be fun.
You're
that
like
would be great.
Sponge.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So whatever interests me. So then I flew down and I did your course and I met great people. That's, so I didn't meet you, Caleb, there. You were the year prior to me, I believe, or a year or 2 years. I'm not sure. But
I was October 2013 was when I took the course.
And that's what I think is so cool about this business is that, here I am located 7 hours north of New York in Canada, but I know I could, basically pick up my social media and hit up anyone that does concrete throughout the world and just be able to fly and go visit them for 2 days. And we just talk shop for 2-3 days until our wives would go crazy. And it's just such a cool thing to be able to do. And I don't think you can do that on the industries because we're willing to share what we've learned because it's such a hard business. And also, the barrier to entry into someone else's market is,
sure.
I'm not playing in your market, Caleb, maybe someone might buy a sink off me in your area, but I hope
so. Cause there are some alternatives that are much larger companies that aren't as, when you get large, right? Like I think of a Restoration Hardware or something. There's pros and cons to big companies like that getting into this because on the one hand, it increases awareness that concrete is a viable material. On the other hand, when you get so big, it's really hard to keep your quality. And so I hope that somebody in my area is buying Jason's sinks because I know they're good.
Yeah. But see, the difference between, a company like Jason's who really is focused on, you're essentially a production company, right?
Yeah, and maybe we should specify kind of what company, we do. I don't think you talked about it. Your
standards are extremely high.
Right.
In contrast to, like, Restoration Hardware doesn't make anything. They find vendors wherever in the world, and they're buying bulk, inexpensive materials, products, finished products. In fact, I just got an email from Kim sent me an email yesterday. Somebody had bought this concrete table from a company, not Restoration Hardware, but one of those styles of, they bought it online probably and whatnot. And they were like, what do I do to protect it? It's I want something that's going to give it better stain resistance. And, one of the challenges that we face is, and I've seen these kind of products, like I'm visiting my parents this Christmas, and one of their friends has a concrete table from one of these online companies, and they asked me to look at it, and like, it looks like a beginner's project, right? It's got that level of
mold release still on it.
It's just
corners
one of those.
Routed.
Hey, this is my first project.
Yeah.
Look at this. This is what's being put out there, and
so it's a double-edged sword, right? Because they're giving awareness, but the awareness is not ideal, right?
Yeah.
So
the quality standard is really low. So to have somebody like you, Jason, service a client in a very different market, I think is a very good thing, because now it injects something different, but something of a high quality into the market. And it forces that person who's serving that local market to now maybe elevate their quality standards to meet a new standard that's coming in. And I think as a whole, that can be a positive thing. It's not necessarily a threat, but it's like, wow, this, you happen to be working with a designer, and that designer sees the quality of your work, and they're like, hey, how come your stuff, Mr. Local Guy or local lady, isn't up to this? Why can't you do this? Right. So I think that's a good motivator for the market as a whole, for us to continually improve our product without losing our identity of who we are and what we want our materials to be.
Well, and to that point, Jason, you've told me at different times that your business is kind of semi-custom. And I remember when you started that journey, I guess it's about 4 or 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
Because you started kind of where we all start, which is ultra custom, right? I mean, you were doing only custom work, which is what I've done most of my career. And so I'm curious, what did that look like? And then how did you decide to go from ultra custom to semi-custom? And what did that look like? What's the path? I mean, as much as you're willing to share, and, kind of where are you now?
I hope that everyone does this. Yeah. So, I mean, just to kind of give the people that don't know me, in my box, what we do, we're 13 a 13-person crew. We run an 8,000 square foot facility. We do around 200,000 pounds of concrete a year, I believe, if my number's not off. Around that. So we're a fairly high volume. I know I can't compete against other larger manufacturers, but what we do is we're semi-custom. So I started out exactly like you said, Caleb. It was just custom. But that's kind of how you have to start, because you have to learn. You have to figure out, how am I going to make this mold? Is it going to unmold? How do I draft it? What's the ideal drain on it? What fits best with my standards? What thickness do I want to pour? What do I do? Do I enjoy doing 3-dimensional things? Do I want to spray? Do I want to SCC, self-consolidating concrete? What is it that I want to do? So I think it's important that you have to go through those growing pains and figure out what you want to do. And then within our market, you kind of decide what you're going to focus on. Because I can do exterior fire pits, but I'm never going to be as good as Archpot in California, Tim Hall. I'll never be as good as Chad Keating in Western Canada for his fireplace surrounds.
That guy is fantastic.
So, and I'm just name dropping here a little bit, but
they're great.
We have to decide what we're going to be good at. And for me, that was just kind of something we decided to focus on and say, we're going to focus in this area, whatever's easiest to us. I don't enjoy spraying myself. We do spray, but it's not something that I enjoy doing that much. So we try to avoid it. So let's do stuff that we want to do and stuff that we know that we can be good at. Mm-hmm. So, that being said, we do custom work. We do custom. What is your biggest cash driver to your business? Now, you can't ignore that. Where do you make the most money? Where can you scale it? So what we do is we kind of work we do flat work. I enjoy anything that's flat work. So that means we pour slabs that are 1.25 inches thick, true slabs all the way through. So, and then we pour slabs, we do 5x10 slabs, and then we cut them. We'll polish them, we'll grout them. We put a first coat of sealer on them, and then we put them in a CNC stone machine, and then we cut them. So that allows us to just, and by pouring an inch and a quarter thick, we force, I try to lead my clients but I don't want them to lead me. So I want to force them to buy an inch and a quarter. Why an inch and a quarter? Well, industry standard for stone is an inch and a quarter. Cabinets are kind of designed to be that height. It's a fabulous thickness for the power to weight ratio. What I'll use is, even though we only need to go 3/4 of an inch thick, 1 inch is great, but that extra 1/4 inch, I know my piece is going to get in 99% of the time.
It's very strong.
It's very strong. It's overkill. So, but I know
overkill is underrated.
Yeah, exactly. I do not wake up at night thinking pieces are going to make it in or not. We do take the extra precaution, the extra mile, because I have had things snap before. So inch and a quarter standard. So we force our clients to funnel in towards that. You can get 2 inches thick. You can get 4 inches thick, but your price is going to go way up. Mm-hmm. Why? Because that fits out of our box right now. Yeah. And there's certain locations that we do not go to as well. We try to funnel our highway towards, we're an hour from Montreal in the countryside. So Montreal is, X million people, and that's where our main hub of folks are. So we try to always go towards that area, so we can do 4 to 6 installs in a day, instead of driving all over the countryside. Then within that, so we do, and a big part of our business as well is integrated sinks. I think, which is one of the power points of this industry, is that who else can do that? Someone else can do inch and a quarter slabs, right? That's the whole stone industry. For them to do integrated sinks, it's a pretty tough one. So
it's very expensive, and not everybody can do it.
Well, and it leaks. That's the other thing. I've seen a bunch of integrated sinks out of stone, and the problem is they're really visually obvious, and B, weak. I mean, they're physical weak points.
Blew up.
Exactly, and so you can do very angular. I mean, I suppose if you had the right machine, you could hone a nice round. I've seen granite vessel sinks, but
that gets expensive,
phenomenally heavy and very expensive. And
the machine time on that, you've got to, we take, I've calculated. I like to quantify everything that we do. So I want to know how much a person costs me per hour. I want to know how much my machine, our CNC, costs us per hour. And to put a stone in a machine and run a program like that all day long, whoa. Must
That's
be really
tying that machine up. I mean, you're absolutely right. Like long time ago, I had a piece of stainless steel water jet cut out, because it was the least expensive way of getting steel cut. I don't think laser cutters were that available way back when I had this cut.
Is this big logo in that
the big blue CCI logo that was, and at the time, water jet was like, I forget what it cost them per inch of cut. Like when you factor in the maintenance and the materials and the consumables, it was like, I'm just going to round it up, and it's kind of like it's $1 an inch or something like that they had to charge for cutting, because their costs, their total costs for doing that were very high. 30, 40 cents an inch or something like that, which is kind of ridiculous when you think about it. Mm-hmm. But
they need to quantify that.
Think about it. It's not just, how much is this bottle of, unicorn tears that I'm buying because somebody told me to buy it, and then only look at that, or that bottle's $2 cheaper, so I'm going to use that. Well, what is the cost of actually using that? What is the total cost to your business? Is it going to actually take longer to produce and recover that investment? Because everything you buy is an investment, and your profit is you got to recoup that investment, plus pay all your bills, plus have money in the bank for your business, and then by the way, pay everybody, including yourself. Mm-hmm. So that's the big picture that is very important for people to
most entrepreneurs don't factor in their own time.
There's only two kinds of people in this. There are three kinds of people in this business. Real business people who think about these things, hobbyists who do this because it's fun and they don't really think about or care about the costs, and then the people who should do that but fail.
Yeah,
absolutely. So those are the only three people. And where are you in that spectrum?
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's hard because a lot of people business scares them.
Yeah.
They don't want to think about it because it's an unknown. It takes them away from the things they want to do. They want to be creative. They want to work with their hands. They want to, be proud of something. And the harsh reality for a lot of folks is to be successful and to actually do this and to make a living out of it. You personally eventually have to stop doing that.
Well, I think it's important that people decide what they want to do from the beginning.
Yeah.
Are you designed to work with other people or just work for yourself? Some people aren't. Do you want to manage a crew? Because it's not always easy, right? So it's so important that people decide what they want to do. People that do work for themselves in this business only by themselves can absolutely make it work. But you need to decide it's one or the other. And you have to be aware that you are exchanging your time for money because it's a time-consuming business. And time is the only thing that is a finite resource on this planet. There's always going to be money. I mean, but time, we can never get it back. It's always working against us. So you have to make that conscious decision. But if that's what you like to do because you love to tinker, you just have to be okay with that. And you have to also be okay that it's a physically tolling endeavor. So, my father still works and he's 74, but he's an architectural draftsman. So he isn't using his muscles anymore. So you have to be aware of that. And I mean, you can run this deep into your as you get along, but are you going to be hopefully you have a subcontractor to install for you, because you are not going to be wanting to lift 400 to 600 pound counters into a kitchen anymore the older you get. So it's a conscious decision you have to make, and you have to decide which battles you want to pick. And maybe if you're going to make it all yourself, hopefully you can find someone to install for you or subcontract certain things for you, and then you just do all the rest of that yourself.
And you have to realize too that there's a ceiling to what a one-man shop can do, and I think a conversation, Jason, you and I have had in the past is there's really there's a cap and there's a transition point, right? So a 1, 2, or 3 man shop can do X number of square feet realistically in a year in countertops or whatever the case may be. And there's realistically in that size, that size range of business, there's a pretty firm, at least I've found, cap to what the owner can make in a year. And once you get past that 2, 3, or 4 man shop, that's when you can start to scale something like this, but it becomes a large monster that you then have to feed every month. And so there are definitely battles that you've got to fight and choices you've got to make to decide which kind of business do you want to be. And so, to kind of move the conversation along, I think at what point did you go from or make the decision to go from a smaller ultra custom shop to a larger semi-custom shop?
I think that was pretty much I don't know when Orlando was, but was that in 2019? Yes, I think it was pretty much at that point. And I'll give the credit to that was kind of when we brought my wife on board with me. She definitely helped change the business because I was able to focus on where I am better, and I am not best at doing administration, even though I do have a great understanding of how business works. I am not nearly as efficient as she would be. So having her on board with me just offloaded all that, and she excels in it. She excels in customer service. She excels in, quoting, and just is much more efficient than me. So then that was when, we were able to kind of get out of it. But it was when I met you in 2019, I believe, that we went for it. So, my wife, business partner, Serena, she's laughing because I'm talking about her right next. So anyways, that was kind of the transition we went for. And we decided this is how we're going to do it. And because you can't just pull the plug and say, I'm not doing custom anymore. Right. Because you've developed these relationships with these designers and these architects, and they love working with you because they can just draw something and you'll be like, sure, I'll make it. I'll do whatever you want because I'm hungry. So we need to pull that hunger away from us, and then we need to in-store people. They believe in you more when you say no. No is a powerful word. And then they say, if you say we will do this for you, but we do have standards that you have to follow. And then respect right away is dropped, not dropped, is installed. And they say, okay, this guy respects himself.
Mm-hmm.
He respects that. He's not going to make a custom integrated sink. And by that, I mean the mold, the sink mold itself. He's going to use a mold that they already have. So for me, that's something we do. We do not, I mean, it does happen for, you know,
well, if it's beneficial to you, right? If it's a shape that you're like, ooh, that would actually fit into my business model, then sure, right?
Sure. But I mean, we have to be careful with that because I find myself all the time getting dragged back into it. If you do something like that, it requires me. So then that value, the only thing that I'm gaining at that point is traction in my immediate pocket right now. And it's not 5 years down the line. So if I were to say I want to sell the business, which I have no intentions of doing, but you
need to be thinking about that, you know, even if you don't have any intentions.
If we're going to build it, I want to build it to be great, and I want to build it to be sellable, and I want to build it that, you know, I do not have to be there all the time, because there is no I in team, especially on my team. The company is not me. I rarely ever talk to a client. And why? Because my team needs to be fantastic, and they are. And they need to be able to deal with all these situations. So they'll come and ask me and say, hey, can we do this? And if we can, how are we going to do it? I don't want to jump all over the place.
That's a good kind of interjection. Jason, you've got a rule in your shop that I hope I'm going to lead you into. What is that rule?
Yeah. If it requires me, then we don't want to do it. Right. So
I love that so much. Yeah.
Because my team is so good at what they do. They're so good at. I'm going to keep throwing out the name Benny. He's in a master craftsman in my shop, and I go and ask him how he wants us to process this piece, because he's going to be one that does all the finishing on it. He spends 40 hours a week finishing pieces. How can I even compare to him? He is the master in that area. Yeah. So if it requires me, the workflow is going to be too tough on my whole team. And then I see them struggle because I'm the one that says, well, don't touch it. I'll come see it. I'll let you know. And then
it's a bottleneck, right?
It's a bottleneck, and it pulls confidence from them. So I mean, there's still certain things that they'll come and see me and say, hey, it was super hot 2 weeks ago. Like, it was in the 90s to 100s, and with the humidity through the roof. I mean, for you guys, you're like, yeah, it's normal, right? But it was Orlando weather here. Yeah, right. I prefer to pour in, what is it for you guys? I guess the 70s, right? That's a nice weather for us.
20, 21, 22.
Yeah. So that created my team was like, now what do we do? Okay, we've got to upper ice from 50% to 65 to 75%. So those are decisions that they need me to help them with. But other than that, they can, they're pouring right now. The shop, I wasn't there at the shop yesterday. I happened to be working on the business and not in it. I do still spend a lot of time working in the business, and don't get me wrong, I haven't completely gotten myself out of it. It's still something we're working on, but they are, as of 7 this morning, pounding away working on projects themselves, because we've created these standards and they understand how it works. They know that all of our integrated sinks are only 1 inch thick. So they're not asking me, hey, what thickness do I need to make this mold? We have a full-time mold maker, and he talks to me like 2 hours a week, because he just always does the same thing. So and
I think that's a really powerful and poignant point that you've kind of made in this, is that you have in empowering the people that work for you, you've taken your ego out of it, which is really brilliant, because it's hard to do as somebody who is a creative who gets a lot of joy out of making things. It's really hard to take your ego out of it. And that's a really impressive feat that you've done, is, and it's working. It does work, right? I mean, that's the provable point.
It's working for Jason. I think some of the takeaways that I'm hearing that I think other folks are going to benefit from this is, you as the business owner had a broad vision that you're continually refining, but staying true to. And part of that process of, the first big step is letting your ego go and say, hey, I got to go learn from somebody else, because somebody else knows more than me. And you did that with that weekend crash course, which I think those kind of 2-day classes, I mean, we're going to have a 2-day class. They're fantastic because they open your eyes. right? Ours is a little
It
different
gets
because
you going, right?
it's not designed for somebody who doesn't know how to do this. And just as a teaser, it's more of, hey, you know, we want to really dive into some of the more
material.
esoteric things about the materials. And we're not going to we don't have to worry about, you know,
The business side
sealers
of
and
it.
installation and templating and all the other peripheral things. We're focusing, it's a more focused.
It's a
And
GFRC class.
they might just be trying to do something for themselves and not feed their family or line their pockets with it.
So you have your vision, and then you set your ego aside to learn, right? And you continue to do that by realizing that you're not you can't do it all by yourself, and B,
Right.
there are things that you don't want to do and can't do, and there are other people who can do it much better than you, who are better qualified to do it. And because you delegate and let go and give them that responsibility, it empowers them, and everybody benefits by that decision. And that's really hard for a lot of people to do.
It is.
When you start a business, you're kind of you have to wear all the hats. So even if you don't want to do this, you're forced to take all the control of everything because you're the one who has to do it. And maybe this isn't 100% true now, and it's certainly probably not 100% true for more mature businesses like yours. But I think early on, I used to say this all the time in class, and I don't say it so much anymore, is when you're starting out and you're hiring your first employees, you, the business owner, have to be the best at doing everything because you're the one who sets the standards.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have a team that can prove that they can hold those standards for you, now you can delegate that to them.
Yep.
So
but if we're setting the barrier too high for them all the time, if we're going for all this custom stuff all the time, that it requires all this fidgety stuff, special drafts, certain angles going at it from, it makes it too hard for them to be able to
absolutely
to master all the time.
It's a brain drain. It's a time drain. Too many mistakes. And the other thing that I've heard is processes. Having processes and being consistent in what you will do, what you won't do. You have systems. You have processes. You have boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those are all incredibly essential key elements to being successful, because if you don't have those, like if you come to a CCI class, you get templating checklists, you get processing checklists, you get installation checklists, you get all these checklists that we've developed over the years that you can add to that may be helpful to everybody. But it's basically saying, hey, there are things we do that need to get done in a certain order. And if they're not done, you're like, I got to go out and template. So I don't know if you template, but let's say you're going to go out and your guys go out to template, and that was the day everybody agreed upon, and you didn't check to make sure that the cabinets were actually installed properly, and you show up and the cabinets are still in the garage in their boxes and they're not installed. Well, that's just now a huge waste of time, and that's a huge blow to the not just this project schedule, but all the other projects that have to fit in around it.
Yep.
And that's just one of the tiny little examples of a system that you've got to have. But you have other systems that go beyond just the physical doings of things. It's how are you going to handle your payroll, and how are you going to deal with all the things that have to do with business that aren't sexy and don't have anything to do with making concrete.
Yeah, we have these I'm very stingent, and we're actually like really locking down on them right now, is SOPs. So your standardized operating procedures for everything. I mean, if you want to use the bathroom, what's the SOP for it? And that's just a joke. It's just a joke, but it's like, if I'm going to leave my workstation right now to go get a snack, which you're allowed to do in my shop because I encourage freedom. Someone else needs to know that, okay, they need to jump in and do this thing for you. What happens if this happens? For your templating example, the office is very stringent on getting photos. We need photos. We have signed documents. every time the templater goes out, he has to have 3D digital plans, so he knows what he's trying to do. And the contractor has to be aware that if we have to return, well, then that's another charge right away. So there's all these little things, and like Caleb said, you build this fire and you have to keep shoveling coal into it.
Yeah.
But to keep shoveling coal into it, you have to have a cycle, and that cycle is sales, measure, fabrication, install, payment. Well, payment before install, but and it has to keep on rolling, because you have all these people that are eating and eating and eating and eating, and you need to keep feeding that fire. And if you don't have those SOPs in place, then you're just going to crash. You're going to hit a wall. And then what happens is we go into this ginormous custom project into it that requires me and it bottlenecks with me, but I am still stuck answering my daily questions and my daily routine. How is that going to affect the workflow of my guys? They're going to get discouraged and they're not going to feel empowered anymore. So we try to, we do keep things sexy, new, fun, unmolding something, not the same thing all the time, but we do focus on what we're good at. And, I call it the swan dive. If I swan dive every day into a pool, I guarantee you there won't be a splash of water that comes up. Now, someone comes up and sees me and says, "You kind sir, I offer you $4,500, but I want you to do a triple backflip and finish in a swan dive. But if you make a splash, I won't pay you." And that's the same thing of doing custom. Yeah. So someone says, "Hey, I want you to do this reception desk." And you're like, in general, it's the same material that I use. It's kind of the same technique. Yet we're trying to butt these seams together here because the designer doesn't want this to be seen, and he wants to have a kicker underneath it, but the floor is not level, so we have to put these adjustable feet. But we need to compensate for that because of this. And then all of a sudden, these gears start turning. That stuff's fun. It is, but can you translate that message to the rest of your team? Will you be able to enjoy?
And can you have the same profit margin? Because that's something that we don't talk about a lot, is these massive projects are really, really sexy, but, they take an ungodly amount of time. And, are they actually as profitable as they sound when you first quote them out? Right. And the answer is usually no.
Well, let's look at this, a $20,000 reception desk, right? However long that takes to make, or sell 4 dining room tables.
Yeah.
What would you rather do?
And assuming that it comes out right the first time, what if you have to do it again?
Exactly.
Right. And because of your massive history doing it, that those dining tables are going to come out the first time. It's a near guarantee.
It's a near guarantee. And, my intro and my exit is what I enjoy the most. If my requirement to put something in is the same amount of energy as to take out, then to me, that's a winning product. So for me, a shower base is a no-go. Why? Because I can drop it off on the site, and because I wouldn't install it because that's I'm not a plumber, or that's a tiler's job. But if something happens to that, what's your exit strategy? It's tiled in. You're going to rip this whole shower out? To me, that's a no-go. So a table is, I put this table in, and then there's a defect of sorts. You have one right now. The finish wasn't as it was supposed to be for some reason. We'll see when we get it back. But I'm not even going to go on site and fix it. I'm going to make another one. We're going to go swap the top off. And I'm going to pull the other one out. And then we're going to repair it and maybe just reseal it, or I don't even know what's wrong with it. But for me, that's the efficient way of doing it. And then we'll keep that table, either stock it in inventory if someone else buys it, yay, or we'll put it back in the sock, cut it into another shape, or whatever is best for you, or discount it. To me, that is, the
more efficient way to.
It's the more efficient way of doing it. But don't get me wrong, we still do that flame. You have to keep ignited. I don't just want to do little flower pots this size all day long. So we still do take that curved reception desk once in a while, because it creates an authority. It keeps my designers and our architects, okay, these guys still have it. They can do it. So we pick those, one every 2 months, or there is no number to it, but it comes along and we're like, okay, this is going to be,
I think challenging yourself periodically is very healthy, because it keeps you from being complacent and stagnant with, you're just pure production shop cranking out. You could be making flower pots.
But that being said, we do.
There's nothing wrong with making flower pots, by the way.
There's nothing wrong with making flower pots. But if we're going to pick the project, I'm not going to take a big giant project that goes into someone's residential home. Why? Because no one's going to see it. So I want to do it in a restaurant, an airport, a spa, and I'm going to name all these things. It doesn't matter. But then someone's going to walk in, they're going to be like, these counters are gorgeous. Who did this? And my logo isn't on it. I don't do that, but it'll make it where
and say, I did that. Go see it.
I did that. Or someone say, oh, I saw this on Instagram, and then, oh, that's Johnstone that did that. And so for me, that'll generate leads that'll turn back to myself. So to do a huge giant fireplace surround in someone's residential home, I mean, sure, it's stimulating, but I mean, I'm not going to create any other leads off of it. So for us, that's kind of not the strategy we go for. I mean, it can still end up happening, but that's not what we try to do.
So to kind of bring the conversation around, what would you say to other people who are, interested in getting into this business, whatever facet of it that might be, single man shop, that might be kind of what you've gotten into, but what would you say the barrier to entry is? What would you say the best way to start is? How would you encourage somebody?
Well, that's a great thing about this business, because the barrier of entry, I chose this business, one of the reasons, because it's a niche business. When I was trying to figure out my life plan of what I wanted to do, I was like, do I want to get into something that there's a lot of competition, where it's the race per square foot to the end? Let's just say polishing concrete floors. There's, you spend $25,000 and get a machine, and you can pretty much get into the business, right? I mean, there's other factors and stuff like that, but so the barrier to entry is pretty low. It's the knowledge to keep you going that's going to be heavy. So niche businesses are fun. Why? Because we're paving our own path. For me, this is super exciting right now, because we're just consistently working on new things. How can we better ourselves? And it doesn't exist, or not that I know of, versus, let's say, the stone industry. They have all these tools already that can be used. I'm not talking physical tools, but they have, all these standards for square footage, linear pricing. And it's like, we don't have that. So let's make this fun, and let's charge what we want to charge. Let's charge what we think we're worth. Yeah. Let's be fair, but we're kind of paving our own path, and I can't really compare it to, but when the beginning of social media hit and you're in the forefront of that, and they're like, are we just, is Facebook about being a place for people to meet, or is it about gathering data? And that, so it's not the same thing, but that's, to me, what I find is the interesting part of this business, is that everything is fun, and we're creating our own path, and no one is saying, no, this isn't how you do it.
And I'm going to interject and build on that, because, I got started more than 24 years ago. And although the materials have changed a lot, what's really changed is the things we can do. It's only gotten the landscape of possibilities has just grown. The things we can do, and the different finishes and the different looks, and just the physical things we can do and how we can do them has grown exponentially compared to, way back in the old days when, it was the concrete countertop industry, because that's pretty much all you could make.
Right.
Now it's so much more than that.
Anything.
Now there's the craft concrete industry, where you can make, furniture and all of the things that Jason's doing. Certainly countertops are a big part of it, but
that's super exciting, because you can say, within this business, what business do I want to do? Do I just want to make exterior fire pits? Because, man, they are beautiful. Yeah. So, and that's a beautiful business model. It's a product that you can sell. It's not a service that you're providing. It can be sold and resold, pulled back. Your intro and your exit are great. So it's a very exciting thing to be able to say, okay, I do enjoy this material. Now what? And I enjoy being creative from it. I just something I want to do. What product or what part of this business do I want to be in? And there's just so much room to play. And even if Caleb, you and I are both doing sinks, doesn't matter. There's enough business out there. When I first did my course, I met a fabulous guy who's still a friend today. His name is George. He did 2015 course with me, George Tremblay, and he's from Montreal. And when I first showed up to the class and I saw that there was another guy with the name Tremblay, which is a French-Canadian name, like Gerard, actually, right. I was like, I couldn't believe it that I flew,
all this
to
way.
the southern part of the States and there's a guy from Montreal doing the course. And I was just like, but then I came home and we became great friends and we refer each other jobs. And there was so much business for both of us that it didn't matter. Right. And it's just depending on, what you wanted to do and what you wanted to say yes to. So that's
one of my favorite things about this industry actually is there's certainly competition, but it's a lot more friendly, I feel like, as a general rule than other niches, because so in my area, 50 minutes from me is Harvest Leisure.
He's a genuine craftsman.
His work is so great, and we refer each other jobs, and he's such a kind person. Fluid form concrete design in Brevard, North Carolina. Like, I'm so here for his business, and I want him to succeed. Right. And truthfully, we don't really run into each other from a job to job perspective very often. I mean, we have lunch probably once a quarter. And so I'm echoing kind of the experience that you had. Like,
he might even call you to help him install something, because he's like, Caleb, this is crazy, and I need your expertise.
Great for business.
It is, and when we have that,
it elevates us, and we keep climbing.
It does. It keeps you honest. It keeps
we
you
we
good.
Can rely on each other. Hey, I need, I'm out of X ingredient. Do you have a bag of cement? I need a bag of cement now, or whatever. Right? You can help each other, like good neighbors.
Yeah. And we do that. And when the flood hit in 2021, and I was so blown away by the generosity of people. But when the flood hit in 2021, Harvest took 2 or 3 days off, and he and Trevor both came to Canton and cleaned my tools. And It was like, this is just the generosity of the community. And of course we want to pay that forward. I want to be there for him as well. And so, all that to say, there's enough work for everybody. So if you're worried, there are, me and him, we're both in the Asheville area. Asheville's not some large market, and yet there's plenty of work for both of us. Certainly Montreal's a larger market. There's plenty of work for both of you. So if you're, concerned that one of the barriers for entry might be, somebody else in your area, I really don't worry about that so much, because there's so few people who actually do this when you think about the grand scheme of things and the grand scale of, how many people actually want the quality concrete. It doesn't seem to me that there's actually that being a barrier. So,
I've never seen it to be an issue.
No. And, coming to class, that's so funny that you met somebody from Montreal. I've met people from Florida, and from North Carolina, now that I'm here. There's one or two people that have wanted, and schedules have been not permitting, as of yet, but there are a couple people in the area who want to come to Ultimate. And my encouragement to them is, yes, come. And you know what, if we're quote unquote competing or whatever, like I want to help you grow your business and elevate the craft as a whole.
Well, I think it's so important that we just keep getting better and that we share our insights, because concrete is not an easy material to work with. It is not. As much as you're going to do the week course and you guys are going to provide so much information, but it's that experience you're going to have when you spend 8 hours trying to unmold something, right? And you're going to be like, why did that not come out? We put a draft on it. It should pop out. But there's suction, and then there's thermal expansion, and there's retraction. And then you pull it and you're like, oh my gosh, well, why did that Bondo stain my concrete? So it's just all these. And so you can't learn these things until you do them. It's to rely on other people. We're going to rely on you guys to teach us the fundamentals, and have the support through the back ends of the continuous of our business. But we have to be able to share with each other, right? Now, that being said, you don't have to give all your business tricks away. But I am happy to share with a lot of people kind of what we do and how to make it work and my experiences of it, because it's going to elevate the business. We're going to make durable products that are beautiful durable products that are going to last longer, and we're going to get away from that restoration hardware, fiasco or whatever. I'm just name dropping them, but I have no issues with them at all. I never run into competition with them. I never have. So Yeah, I mean, it's just if we can all elevate each other, that's the way to do it.
The thing that I've seen, like way before I was out of school, when this is before any form of social media, before the internet was the internet as we know it, in the late 80s, early 90s. I did aquaria, like freshwater planted aquariums. So my focus was not keeping fish, it was growing plants and live plants and raising fish. So there were Usenet groups that were like electronic bulletin boards, and that's how you got your little modem, and I got a 1200 baud modem, so mine's fast. And you did the dial-up thing, and nobody else could use the phone. Yeah, that's the old days, right? And you paid by the hour.
I can still hear that sound in my ears.
Internet.
And you paid by the hour to be on the internet, and you learn things by asking. Like there were a group of people. There was this one guy, I think he was out of Denver. His name was George Booth, and he and his wife kept these amazing tanks. Now, there were no photos. Like, you didn't see photos. You couldn't exchange photos. This is all text, all courier-based, like typewriter-style text. That was it. There was no fancy fonts or anything like that. This is old days. And, the amount of information that somebody who had found success and was willing to share, that avalanche of generosity just inspired and enabled so many people. It's, subconsciously that kind of created a template of, hey, this is how you do it right. You learn something, you get really good at it, and you help people. I mean, like you said, Jason, you don't give away all the secrets, but we all face the same problems. We all deal with the same issues. We all have the same dumb mistakes happen.
Well, you don't give away all the secrets unless you start a school and then you know.
And
then you sign an NDA, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
No,
nobody.
You're not going to sign an NDA.
Nobody can learn everything. Nobody can know everything. And if I learn, I'm always learning from other people. Like if you come up with a solution for something and I go, boom, why didn't I ever think about that? We have so much on our mind in terms of dealing with schedules and wondering about this and how about that and payroll and what's my inventory? Do I have enough of that kind of pigment and all the little nuts and bolts of all the things day to day? And that's why your systems are in place, so you don't have to keep those in your head. Other people can manage them.
Yep.
There's a certain limit to how much processing power and how much emotional energy you have to go, I'm going to tackle this new project and I'm going to solve that problem and I'm going to do it all by myself. That's a hard challenge to take on yourself when you have all these other things going on. But if you just reach out, maybe somebody's already said, hey, you know what? Do this. It works.
We figured this out. This is what we
figured it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the online communities, the Usenet groups of old, the forums that were out there, I can't remember what some of them were. We had one, Concrete Connections. Now it's the Facebook groups and things like that. These are amazing resources. They're a double-edged sword, right? There's you can dive into. It's like going to a giant yard sale or a flea market, and you're looking for that golden nugget, right? But you have to sort through all this ocean of junk, and if you're starting out, and this is where I see a lot of beginners struggle, is they turn to those sources for solutions. Hey, how do I do this? And then they're overwhelmed with this onslaught of information
that is often conflicting or sometimes conflicting, and
they have
may or may not be right. And
they have no way of sorting out and so going, those 47 answers that I just got that all say the same thing, those are all wrong.
And now I've got to amalgamate them and figure out what
that
nuggets I can take from them.
One contrary voice was right, but they don't know how to do that. And then they're also overwhelmed with the unfortunate drama that exists, and it's existed way back in the Usenet groups, the same level of
and it exists in other industries too.
So
I've heard the woodworking industry is very like this.
Name it.
Whatever.
So I don't want to dive down that, but it's one of those. Here's a pearl of wisdom: like online forums and asking group opinions are useful to a point. It's like trying to learn off YouTube.
Well, I think it's kind of useful after you've learned, right?
Well, I think you need to take everything with a grain of salt. So I think someone, posted the other day, what do they do to do faucet knockouts? I saw that go by. And some people, someone says I take a piece of PVS piping and I cut it on an angle and I push it into foam. Awesome. Someone else says I use rubber plugs. Great. Someone else says I core bit on site. Fabulous. But just to take that and see what works best with your workflow and your wallet and your time.
And what are the potential downfalls of each of those? I mean, what happens if,
That's a great example. They're all right and they're all wrong for very specific reasons.
Yeah, and I mean, this is just such a...
It's
such a surface example. It doesn't matter. It's just a faucet hole. But I mean, it can, and my word of wisdom would be like, don't make a faucet hole in your shop. Do it on site, because if something changes, what happens if you have an island and you have their sink and the separation is not in the right place, and they actually wanted to line up the faucet hole with the separation and not the center of the sink, and then you happen to line up the center of the sink, you have to redo a whole island because of a $40 faucet hole. I mean,
right. Well, and what happens if the interior designer spec'd a faucet and then the client went out and bought a different one, and nobody knew. Right.
No one knew. And so then all of a sudden you're in this bad situation. It's a shitty situation for, excuse my language, for you. It's a shitty situation for
now I'm gonna
the client.
Have the explicit logo on it.
And it's an uncomfortable situation for the designer. So there's no right and wrong to that. And so it's just to take those tad bits of information. But you need the proper, and I'm listening to you guys chat and go back and forth. And I'm I think one of the number one things that I'd wished from after taking CCI is that, I actually wish I went back a second time, because there's so much to learn. There's so much to learn. You walk out of a class like that, a 1 week class, and you're like, okay. And your class is fabulous, but there's so much you can learn, and you're trying to take it in all at once, and you're trying to understand sealers, and you're like, what's a pozzolin? I've never heard of a pozzolin.
Right.
And then
that's actually a really good point. I didn't go back to the Ultimate course until Jeff asked me to help with one, and I was like, what the hell was I doing not coming back? Because it's like you go to a movie that's really heady, right? You go to Inception or something.
Same thing.
And you watch it the first time and you're like, you're just overwhelmed by the magnitude of this thing, and you're like, what just happened? And then you go home and you kind of try to process it, and then you go see the movie again and you're like, oh, I missed that. That's what. And so, when I went back, I think it was in 2018, maybe, Jeff, that I went back and helped with that first class. And I was addicted at that point, because I was like, oh my gosh, I missed. And it wasn't because the information wasn't there. The class was relatively the same. And I'm like,
there's too much going
gosh, how did I not see that? How did I not see that? And so going back, I think, was more empowering than or as empowering, maybe not more, but as empowering as going the first time.
Well, you're not going to focus on the things that are completely obvious. Okay.
Like I didn't know what GFRC was the first time I went, and the second time that was a foregone conclusion, and so I could focus on the other stuff.
First class, I really understood that I need to wax my mold, so the corners of my mold, so when we pull a silicone joint, I can use a bead and the silicone pulls off. Fabulous. Yeah. Okay, but maybe I missed the super critical part about acid etching. Or preparing your surface properly. And that's one detrimental part. I remember Jeff calling you because I was doing my first big kitchen, and my big break for me, it was a $10,000 kitchen. And I was like, $10,000 was a lot of money.
That's a big project.
For me as starting up solo on my own. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my goodness, I've been working for, FedEx, and to make $10,000, it takes a long time. And I remember saying, okay, well, I've got to acid etch this. So then I put muriatic acid in a spray in water bottle, like a Windex type one. And I just started spraying it on the surface dry, and it's bringing out these big blobs and they're popping everywhere. And I remember like calling Jeff in this huge panic because I had a cream finish prior, and then I burned that cream off with acid, but I didn't understand why and what was going on. Yeah. And then he's like, well, what you could do is, first you can just polish that out. It's no big deal. But how about you flood it and you need to etch the whole surface evenly and then I was like, I must have missed that in class because I was talking to some gentleman from Georgia and we're talking about crocodiles. And for me, that was blowing my mind. And my attention span is the size of this pen. And there's just a lot going on. So it's just, I do believe that, and I'm just going on and on here. But even if you were
like diligently paying attention, there's
a lot. Yeah.
It's a lot. The human brain can only absorb so much information at such a rate. And, to be honest, to really get good at doing this, there's the whole, 10,000 hour, whatever, whether that's real or not.
It's real.
It's at least 10,000 hours, right? Put a number.
Whether or not it's that low.
Time, time. And to try to teach the basics, just the basics of what you need in 5 days is a struggle. And I think it's kind of foolish for folks to think, well, I'm going to go a 2 or 3 day class and learn everything, or I'm going to learn like a whole bunch of different unrelated things that are, here's a finish and here's a different finish, and maybe this is a molding technique, and little spots of techniques that are super valuable to learn after you know the basics. But to do that as the sum of your education is kind of short-sighted.
Or to try and get the basics in 2 days.
Yeah.
I think you need a larger class, but then you need time afterwards. I think a lot about, and this ties back into coming back into class, which is why we offer 50% off to alumni. But then also, talking to us, other alumni, like really taking advantage of the community and the support after the fact. Like I went to, when I was in college, my grandparents took my family to Israel, and there's just a lot of history there. Thousands and thousands of years, and we were there for like 2 weeks. And I spent months trying to amalgamate all of that information. And even now I'll like read something or hear something. I'm like, oh, that's what that was? Because it doesn't even click until years later. And so, I think being an active participant in the afterwards, whether that's reattending a class, whether that's joining us for an event, whether that's calling me or Jeff on the phone, whether that's calling another alumnus on the phone, developing those relationships. You said you with George, you developed a friendship with him after the fact. I've got friendships that you rely on. And I think having that community of like-minded people is just so, so important. And it's, you can't do that in a vacuum. Right. And I think taking that initial step of, it's an investment, right, to jump into a class. But if you really want to do this,
I'm going to cut you off, Ken, but let's look at this from another perspective. The best thing you can do in life is not the best thing you can do in life, but a fantastic thing you can do for yourself is invest in yourself. Right? So investing in yourself is super empowering. How much does it cost, and how long does it take to go to school and get a job or a career? You're talking, if you want to become an electrician or a mechanic, you're going to have to, we call them DEPs, which are, a minimum a year to year and a half. If you want to become a licensed carpenter, you have to go to trade school for that. I believe that's what you guys would call it. How long does that take? Okay, you want to become an engineer, you want to become a lawyer, you have to pay your tuition and you have to invest your time into it. So if someone to me is not willing to invest, how much is a course? $5,000?
4,000. It's a little less. It's $39.95. So 4,000.
So you want me to buy a $10,000 kitchen from you, but you are not willing to invest $5,000 in yourself.
Right.
So to me, that is just does not make any sense at all. So I would rather spend it. I think someone should go out and spend $50,000 if they want to make this into a business, because the ROI on that, the return on your investment, is right here. So that's super fast. And I'm not talking about just doing a one-off deal like buying a polisher to do your basement floors and then doing your neighbors next door. I'm talking about you want to make this a career. So if you want to invest in yourself, I think that's super important, and you should take that 5,000, that 10,000, and invest in yourself.
It's going to pay dividends.
It's going to come back tenfold, right?
You pay $4,000 for a class, and the next week you can go make a $4,000 bathroom vanity. Like,
yeah.
There it is.
And it's funny, when I first did the course, I was like, is that $5,000 US, which is like 7,500 Canadian? Is it actually going to pay off? And then, here you are years later doing, $7,000, $15,000, $20,000 sinks. And you're like, oh my God, that $5,000 did pay off. But I mean, I did do those 10,000 hours of learning to get to that point.
Right.
But I mean, the ROI is immediate, right? And this works. What we're talking about is someone that wants to make it work. If you do not want to make it work, then you're not going to make it work. But if you're willing, if it's something you're really interested in, it does not have a choice but to work.
Yeah.
It has to work.
Right.
It has to.
The thing about quality training or education is that it shortens the learning curve, so that even though you still have to put those 10,000 hours in,
well, it shortens
every one of those hours is far more effective, and less of it is involved with stumbling forward in the dark, trying to learn the basics. Like, it took me a year to figure out that water is important. Well, if you learn from somebody who says, hey, water is one of the most important ingredients in your concrete, and you need to really control it.
And your processing.
And then here's why. Right, it's not just how to do it, but here's why.
Yeah, it's not just dump this bag in a mixer, mix it up, and it's going to be this every time. It's when I used to speak at World of Concrete, and I'm kind of officially retired now. I would start out by saying 90% of the problems with all concrete in the world can be solved with water. Too much water is used when you're making the concrete, and not enough water is used after it's hard for curing. Like, those two issues can solve most of the problems with concrete. And it's a way of leading in. It's kind of breaking the ice, right?
But it's real. Yeah. But it's a way of exposing the bigger picture of the implications of a decision, of saying, in this case, oh man, the concrete, it doesn't have enough slump. I need to increase the slump because, this is my third driveway we poured today and my back is tired. You just don't add water to your concrete to make your job easier at that moment, because what are the ramifications of that casual decision?
Right.
And you don't know what you don't know.
And you don't know what you don't know. So that illustrates, when you learn from somebody who has a broader range of knowledge and experience, who is willing to share it with you on a continual basis, that really helps focus your efforts in terms of you mastering something. And by the way, not only starting your business and running your business, learning how to do this, but recouping your investment, because that's kind of what you're having to do. Nobody has the luxury of going, okay, I'm going to go to a class and then spend the next year and a half practicing in my garage and not selling anything.
Oh wait, we had one student that's actually has that opportunity.
They're not going to be successful.
That's paralysis by analysis, also, right? Sometimes you just need to get in, get it done. It's like that guy that says, I'm going to start I'm going to start this business, but when everything needs to be perfect, and then once it's perfect, I'm going to launch it. But I'm not going to launch it until it's perfect. Sometimes the fake it until you make it is kind of the way to go. I don't mean to fake everything, but you just need to dive in heads deep and say, yes, I can make that. Right. And then, maybe I couldn't make it. You can't learn to swim unless
you get in the water.
Exactly. So then sometimes you just need to make it, right? So maybe that's contrary to what I was saying before, but I think kind of, to global, what you guys are saying, it's about empowerment. Empower yourself to get a proper training. Empower yourself to inform yourself about the proper business decisions you need to make. Empower yourself by reading a business book, about getting systems in place. All those tools are going to help you move this thing forward, because
Yeah.
there's just a lot going on. You're going to learn this material, the actual physical material of concrete, but you're also trying to figure out how to talk to designers. What are the prices? How much do I charge for this install? There's a lot of things going on. Once you've wrapped that around your head, and then you've spent 13 hours installing a fireplace at 4 hours from your home, and you're not seeing your friends and your family and stuff, then you kind of say, okay, we have to do something like this. A fireplace needs to be charged per hour for the install. Because, in my opinion, that's what a fireplace needs to be charged, because the client is expecting you to scribe walls, make modifications. They're not expecting you to sit a counter down, and if there's a 1/4-inch gap on the bottom, put a shim under it. It's just not the expectations of the client. So, I've learned that throughout the year. So something like that, it will be a cost per hour on the install with a fixed rate to start, or upcharge it through the roof, and hopefully you get it, and then you're going to come out winning. But it's just to take all that and get all that information from.
Well, but I think it's a lot easier to dive headfirst into the pool when you've got somebody there who's going to, who's willing to save you from drowning.
Yeah.
And so I think there's, for me, I mean, I did that. I bought somebody's company with no knowledge, right? And I was kind of drowning. And at that point, it was like, man, I'd have saved myself a lot of headache if I had dived in by making that investment in myself early.
Mm-hmm. So you purchased your company and then you did.
Yeah, you did it a little bit backwards.
It was a bit backwards, but that's how I tend to do things, I think.
It's okay. It's fine. Here you are today.
The smart people realize that there's a certain order. There's a processing order. Like, you don't start grinding the concrete until you actually get it out of the mold.
Yep.
And
maybe we can pour that mold and take off all that excess concrete prior to it getting hard. Right.
There you go. That's take off all that excess. So
that's an efficient way.
You get smarter by looking back at the things the pain and suffering you went through.
So if we cast in the morning, then just before lunch, we'll take our trowel and pull all that excess concrete off, or take whatever it is, a screed, and pull it all off just before it's set. Because troweling, GFRC is not an easy thing to do. It's very sticky, right? So, but let's get rid of that. So then tomorrow, when we come to grinding, which you asked me is the most daunting part, it's, we're going to spend half an hour instead of half a day, or an entire day. I think I spent 8 hours grinding a piece, and then to flip it over and realize it wasn't what it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then you go, that is a growing pain.
You just wasted the whole day.
The whole day.
You got to redo it. Yeah.
And when I first started,
I'm working on a bathtub series right now, and I realized that using a different, it's really texture on the outside, and using a different texture substrate because it's I'm pressure washing the texture substrate off, and it took 8 or 9 hours for Jay, my shop manager, to pressure wash the substrate off. And so we're like, okay, well, can we use a different one to get the same texture? And so we did a test yesterday, and it's like, oh, yes, we can. And so it's learning those things, right? It's experimenting, but you have to have that base of knowledge. And so, I mean, because we could go on all day, and we're at an hour and almost 25 minutes. So we should probably all get to work. But I think to kind of bring it to a point, what we're hoping to communicate here is, A, you have resources, that you have an opportunity to invest in yourself. B, we're here for you to do that, and that's our mission. C, to empower you the way that we've been empowered. I mean, Jason and I were empowered by Jeff, I think, to do what we've done. And now Jeff and I are, it's our mission to empower new artisans, and hopefully empower artisans that would like to come back and take the class, because maybe you realize that you were overwhelmed at first by the deluge of information, and you can come back and distill it better for yourself. So I'll plug the dates just because they're coming up, and they are filling up. We are more than halfway full on our December course, which is December 4th through 8th at my studio in Canton, North Carolina, just west of Asheville. So And then we're getting there as well on our November course, which is the 9th and 10th.
Yeah, we had a slew of signups just the end of last week. So
yeah,
don't wait till the last minute.
Yeah. Because I don't think there's going to be spots at the last minute. The way it's going, which I'm super excited about. But yeah, I mean, and Jason, you've been to the Asheville area. If you're
beautiful.
If you're if you're a craft beer drinker, this is the place to come.
It is.
If you like the mountains, this is the place to come. It's going to be beautiful that time of year. And so on top of
there isn't snow on the ground in December?
We don't get as much snow as you do nearly.
No.
In fact,
I'm just kidding.
Last winter, it didn't snow. Well, it snowed, but it didn't stick at all last winter. Now this winter, I've heard all the good old boys are talking about, this one's going to be a bad one.
The woolly worms are big this year.
Yeah, they are. The acorns are big. The woolly worms are black. So all the wives' tales are saying it's going to be a bad winter. But who knows? I mean, as winters go, I think North Carolina has fairly mild winters, and that's a beautiful time to be up.
Just that on its own is worth anyone from the north.
Well, and it's on its own is worth anybody from further south than here to come too.
Right,
so it's kind of like a win-win.
Right, escape the heat.
Yeah, but we've got on top of all of the crazy learning that we do and the dinners we go out to and the community that we develop, we've also got from a tourist perspective, we've got 70 breweries in downtown Asheville, which is massive saturation
great
of breweries.
Cultural. I mean, there's great art.
The food, the culture. The largest privately owned home in the country is here, and you can go see it, which is fun.
And in December it'll be decorated for Christmas.
Oh my gosh, the Biltmore Christmas is so cool.
Amazing.
I'm sure it is. So
Jason, you're going to want to come back now, right?
Maybe that's it. We'll see. I have to carve out some time in my schedule.
I know.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna cut us off there because I don't want to. It's certainly not a waste of time to listen to an hour and a half, but the problem is that we could go on for 4 hours.
We just want people to get the point and pull as much, positive information. Do not waste anyone else's time, right? So,
I think the other takeaway is to see somebody who has elevated themselves and become truly successful in this industry. It's possible. Jason's a great example of a way to do it.
And with the right training, it's not only possible, it's plausible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, hopefully people pull from this just the sheer, the anything they can use to make their dailies better. How can they make their business better? How can they scale it? How can they put in those standard procedures, the proper training, and all those things are going to come pay you back tenfold. Sometimes working on something today, you can't bill someone for it. I won't be able to, if I'm going to make my website more user friendly, if I can't bill someone for today, that may hurt a bit, but it's going to pay itself off tenfold down the road. So just invest time in those important things. Make your not to-do list, like I've mentioned before, stuff that's not.
Yeah, you said that to me last night, Jason, and I was like, "Wait, not to do."
My not to-do list. I leave that for someone else. That's not worth my time, and I still struggle with that all the time. But to and invest your time properly and go have fun and do what you are good at. I think that's the important part is decide what you want to do and do what you are good at, and try not to do it all, because I guarantee you cannot be the best in the world at all of it. There's so many talented people out there doing this, and just decide which market you want to compete in within this niche of craziness.
Yeah,
fantastic. It's a lot of fun, and I just think it's awesome that like we can mention just the culture and the people that I get to meet. Like I know I can text you guys and be, hey, I'm coming through North Carolina to go surfing.
And you got a place to stay.
You got a place to stay. We can have lunch. I can hit up guys in Australia. I can talk to people in wherever, and across the country,
Singapore,
in Canada,
Switzerland, Australia, US.
Yeah, and meet so many fabulous people. And it's just so for globe hopping and going to, and you can also, if you're going to go visit someone in Australia, well, you can business expense that because you're going to learn. So those are,
that's exactly right.
Fun little things. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, Jason, it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
And this is a weird, moment, but don't close your tab when I end the recording because it has to upload.
Okay.
But yeah, Jason, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come join us. And I know I got a lot out of it, so hopefully our listeners will as well.
Very good, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us.
Have a good one.
All right.
I'll stay on.
Have a good one.
Right,
See ya. I'm gonna stop the. Thanks for listening to the Maker in the Mix podcast. If you liked the content and want to hear more, please like and subscribe. Feel free to follow us on YouTube as well as Instagram, Facebook, and check out the website, www.concretecountertopinstitute.com. And of course, we'd love to see you at one of our upcoming classes. Tune in next week for more informative content. Thanks.